Welcome, everybody. My name is Tamala Trussell, and I'm the founder of Move Past Plastic. We try to address all the single-use plastic issues, from fracking all the way through disposal, and something that we try to get people to understand are two main things. One, recycling is a myth in any kind of form, mechanical, or now the new chemical recycling that the industry is trying to promote because they realize that you are coming, to the understanding that recycling is not real. Yes, technically speaking, every piece of plastic can be recycled, but because there's 20,000 chemicals in it, 3,500 of which are hazardous to your health. And there are not 7 types of resins like you see. That's not a resin symbol. It's not a recycling symbol. It's a resin symbol. There are actually over 400 different types of resins. So we single stream our plastics for recycling, right? Well, you can see why that's not going to be effective. The other reason that recycling is not effective is because it's only effective if it's a commodity. So only resin 1 and 2, next smaller than base, clear, basically a bottle, can be a commodity because we subsidize the fossil fuel industry at every stage, from making the pipelines to extracting with fracking to making cracker plants to make the nurdles, which are the feedstock for the plastics, all the way to disposal. So because we're subsidizing it, plastic can be sold to producers for cheap and less money. So that's the first thing to understand. Recycling's a myth. Second thing to understand is that plastic is more than litter. Plastic equals chemicals. 350,000 chemicals to be precise. The American Chemistry Council makes a new chemical every 1.4 seconds for the production of, guess what? Plastic. Yes, exactly. Plastic. So you'll see a curve of plastic just doing this. It's not even really it's just doing like a sharp J curve. And that's because they're wanting to triple plastic production in order to use their product, because we're moving to energy efficiency and EV, etc. So that's kind of where we are with plastics. And so now that everyone understands that plastic equals chemicals and it's a myth to recycle, we are going to now move into a little bit about our blue vinyl watch party. So what we're going to be doing today is, in order to have a good discussion, and the library only has a slotted here 5:30 to 7:30. The full blue vinyl movie is an hour and 30 some minutes, I think 7. So we're going to do an extracted piece of it, and then I will send out a link of when I can post it on another evening this week, where you can watch the whole thing with me if you want. But I really wanted to be able to have some good discussion and with everybody. So we're going to watch that for about 20-ish minutes. And then we're going to watch a video by Jess Conard, who is an East Palestine resident who has lived through that event. And then when we finish that, she is going to join us via Zoom. There are watch parties going on all over the country through Beyond Plastics and their affiliates. Move Past Plastic is an affiliate of Beyond Plastic, so we're hosting this through them. So she is going to be bouncing from our Zoom to another one. So that's why she couldn't be here in person with us. But we really appreciate her. So, is there anything else I want to say before we get started? I think that's it. Does anybody in the room or Zoom have a question for me before we get started? Okay, then I am going to start our video and see if I can do the screen share. Hopefully technology works. And welcome Scott and Cynthia. There is lavender lemonade in the back, miso soup, and broccoli soup. So go help yourselves. Don't want anyone hungry. I forgot the cornbread house. We know where you live. I know someone would have run over and get it a mile away. You can do that. So I think it said 27.5. For those of you who are just now coming in, we are about to start and part of the vinyl video. All right. So oh no, is it no? You guys in the room should have said something. Give it a minute here. Forgot. Little sticky on here. Okay, we're gonna go turn off the lights and then we've got to get it up on the screen.
What's it? It's for dinner with your salmon. Talk to Dad. I am watching this movie. If you would like to watch the movie too, you may watch the movie too. Talk to Dad.
And those of you who are on Zoom, I'm going to ask you to please put yourself on mute. And if you don't want to be videoed, please take yourself off of your video. All right. All right. Now we're ready. Get this party started.
Just turned your volume off.
Did I? Okay. I was working on turning it up. I need a mouse.
We can't hear anything.
Guys on Zoom, are you able to hear this?
No, we can't hear
No.
anything.
Nope.
Okay, hold on. Let me see if I can figure out what's happening there. I'm the tech person. Video settings.
Do you have sound on it there?
I do. It's coming out through your owl. Let me see if I can move the owl closer to you guys. And then if that's like their problem. Let's try it again here. Okay, let's see if this works now. Whoops. Okay. I'll make it big after we make sure you guys can hear it, okay?
No sound.
Still no sound. Okay. Let's do this.
What happens if you go down to where it says mute and you have a drop down thing?
Yeah, that's what I was looking at. Let go, it's on the owl.
Audio settings. Output level.
Hey, there you
go.
there you, yeah. Slide it over, slide the dot, yeah, the volume slide that.
Let's see, audio automatically, noise suppression, da, 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 da. Okay, let's see if that works. You guys can hear me, right?
Yes.
Just not the video? All right, let's
Correct.
try,
Still not hearing anything.
Still not hearing. Okay, let me go to advanced settings. And if this doesn't work real quick, what I'm going to do is I am going to give you guys the link and the password, and then we'll watch it for the time, and then you guys will come back to the room, okay?
Hey, Tamala, if you have
Yeah.
earbuds in, that also will not allow for the sound to come through with Zoom. So I don't know if you've got earbuds in
No,
or
I don't.
earbuds. Okay.
You could try putting closed caption on.
Yeah, that's true. I could definitely do that. So it won't be as quite as enjoyable, but that could work. Should we give that a try? Okay. So for those of you who don't want to do closed captioning, I'm just going to go ahead and capture the link. Now you have to do me a favor, okay? Legally, this is not supposed to be like getting out there. All right. So please do not share. Do not spread it around because they only purchased 50 copies. Gosh, actually, I'll probably get in trouble for this.
If somebody that did ask to have.
They won't know anything. Tech people are gone, and then
Wonder more.
yeah. Let's try closed captioning. Let's try closed captioning and see if you guys are okay with that, okay? Because I will pretend it's a foreign movie. Okay, where's closed captioning at? Let's see.
No, right there.
Whoop. see if this works.
So when you set up for share screen, did you select optimize for video and share sound?
I did not. Is that a thing?
Yes.
Oh, let's do that then. Here, stop sharing. Share screen.
Somewhere it should say
Oh, there it
optimize
is.
for video and share sound.
That's it. You've saved my life. Thank you.
Well, we'll see.
I'm so hopeful. Yeah. All right. I feel
Here
confident.
is my original, they call it manifesto.
Yay.
Now, you know
Okay,
that that's
perfect. Now I'm gonna
somebody
move the
leaning
owl
it
back
besides
to my
me,
room so they
'cause I
can
would
hear
never have called it a
better.
What'd you call it?
manifesto. I don't know what I would
And
call
can
it.
you restart the movie? It's 26 minutes in.
A fact
Yes,
supporting
that's where we
plaintiff's,
want to start it because we're not going to watch the
conspiracy
whole thing.
allegations.
Against.
Oh,
Because-
got it.
I called it plaintiff's disclosure of claims relevant to plaintiff's conspiracy claims.
Conspiracy claims about.
Final chloride. These are documents that are.
Billy has come to believe that the international vinyl industry knew their employees might get cancer just by coming to work, and that they acted together to hide the truth. Now, every time he represents an individual client with a PVC-related claim, he attaches the conspiracy allegations, which means that 32 separate PVC manufacturers are implicated in each and every suit.
Well, let's just start here. Here is where it
If
did
it had
start.
not been for Billy's persistence in getting these documents from industry, the story of vinyl would never have been told.
This is where David Rossner and Jerry Markowitz came in. PhDs in the history of workplace toxins, writing partners, former brothers-in-law. They were hired by a law firm that was interested in joining Billy's case, but wanted to first make sure his allegations weren't crazy.
So when you read these documents, what were you thinking?
This seems to be criminal activity. This seems to be putting a lot of people at risk, and this seems to be extraordinarily immoral. So we kind of kept looking at each other. Did you see this? They couldn't have done that. And then we'd find confirmation that they did.
Billy's archive is the most extensive collection of internal chemical industry documents anywhere, and it attracts a lot of visitors. There've been investigative journalists, other lawyers, even an officer from the High Court in Venice, Italy. He showed up with an Italian epidemiologist, a US Marshal on a subpoena, spent a solid week Xeroxing, then turned around and went straight back to Venice.
Screen.
Vinyl is not exactly the first thing that leaps to mind when most people think of Venice. But Billy's documents led me straight to one of the largest PVC manufacturers in Europe, the Anychem Corporation, and to a group of former workers and widows just like Dan and Elaine Ross in Louisiana.
Prende poi un coso, metti il piatto, dai, vediamo un po', aiuta a fare, dammi le foto. La mamma deve mostrarle, mamma, mostrare. Ah, sì? Ah, vabbè. Qua era già malato mio marito. È nata la nipotina e lui non la voleva prendere in braccio perché diceva che dovevo guarire. Quando guariva prendeva la bambina. Aspetta, per vedere. Sì, ce n'è un'altra. Ecco mio marito qua. Con tutti i dipendenti? Con tutti i dipendenti della...
With the other workers.
Qua lui ha fatto 25 anni di lavoro quando ha fatto
This was the ceremony.
È la cremazione che hanno dato, allora erano tutti i suoi colleghi di lavoro che erano lì, che festeggiavano.
Did he know he was sick then?
Sapevano di essere ammalati?
No.
They don't know. At that moment they don't know that they was sick.
No. E qui era col capo che gli ha fatto i complimenti dei 25 anni di lavoro, anche qua. E sì, e gli dicevo che erano contenti del suo lavoro. Però lui è quello che fa parte contro di noi, perché era lui che sapeva già di quelli che potevano avere gli operai.
Un giorno andai a pranzo a mangiare e mi lavai le mani e i bracci. Poi mi sono asciugato e mi guardai le mani, erano ancora bianche. Ma allora la polvere che ho detto, ma che non ti devi tirare via, la si vigno via. E quella che te che stava a carica di quando si chiedeva via. Quella che te che respirava quando si chiedeva via. Se non andava via, quella sono male lavando di lì. E quando si chiedeva via, stancata a lavorare. E questo mi è successo. Io le posso assicurare che un reparto dove era la produzione del CPV, che era un modo di insaccarlo, che era spaventoso. Di qui che ha lavorato nel reparto di arte vivi, che ne molto pochi, e qui che le verifica tutti la cicatrice che ha come. Tutti, perché ho il timore ai polmoni. E qui che era in possesso di avere dossier tutti il polmone alle narici.
Empilia worked in a vinyl chloride plant in the early 1970s. Around the same time, in a laboratory 30 miles away, Dr. Cesar Maltoni was conducting an industry-sponsored study to determine the effects of vinyl chloride exposure on lab animals. I got to spend some time with Dr. Maltoni, and he went out of his way to make sure I got the story straight. So were you doing this research before the chemical companies hired you to do the research, and they came to you and said, okay, now we'll fund
If
you?
you want, you must say to me what story you want.
Oh, are
But
they
if you
different
stop,
stories?
I have
They're
to start
different-
from the beginning because the story doesn't go anymore.
It doesn't?
No.
They're two different stories? But you were you doing this research
You
first?
would like why I started exactly?
Ah,
Or not? What do you want? What story do you want I tell you?
okay.
But you have to, because they are filming. I am unhappy now to leave piece of film I cannot control. I like to say to you the story all consequent.
Okay. You mean one piece, each
Yes.
piece at a time? Okay. As long as you just can help me understand.
So you may ask to me directly, why did you start your vinyl chloride disease? And I answer why I started.
Okay.
When and why and when I started it, and they will say so. And then you may stop me and to say why the lesson of vinyl chloride was important, and they will tell why it was important. Okay. What message does this lesson convey? And I tell you the message in this.
Those are four good
so
questions.
if you say me this thing, I will tell you the story. They are all there vinyl chloride. But you know, here we have the autopsy on more than 250,000 animals. So it is quite an arsenal of blocks.
So, all the tumors are in these boxes.
In autumn of 1972, we were aware already that vinyl chloride, at least at the high dose, was producing different type of tumors. And at that time, 3 types of tumor in the first exposed animal, which were Sprague-Dawley rats. Tumor of ear, tumor of kidney, and very, very rare type of tumor, angiosarcoma of liver.
The rats got cancerous tumors from vinyl chloride exposures as low as 250 parts per million. Meanwhile, in Italy and the US, it was legal for vinyl chloride workers to be exposed to as much as twice that amount. The European vinyl industry was not too happy with Dr. Maltoni's results, and they decided to keep his research secret. In 1972, the European vinyl industry agreed to share Maltoni's results with their US counterparts on the condition that the Americans first sign a formal secrecy agreement swearing not to reveal the dangers of vinyl chloride exposure to anyone.
What they were actually signing was a document to keep information private and to keep information about disease private.
It was the Americans' idea to have a secrecy agreement?
No, it was the Europeans.
The Europeans' idea to have a secrecy agreement, but the Americans agreed to it.
They're essentially conspiring among each other not to tell about something that they all know is a problem. And they do it because they're a club, because they're an industry that sees their own self-interest as being more important than the public interest.
Hundreds and hundreds of pounds of vinyl chloride would be released just in the normal course of loading operations, with no precautions taken whatsoever, no signs. It is your nightmare scenario of a concealed toxic hazard. The industry needed to buy time for vinyl. Vinyl was a new product then. Bad news from Italy, if not properly handled, could have potentially made people think twice about turning everything into plastic. Meanwhile, women may have been spraying their hair with vinyl chloride. As early as 1969, some of the manufacturers recognized that women using hairspray on a regular basis were exposed at levels higher than your average industrial worker. The industry was aware of the unlimited potential liability.
If millions of women, not to mention their hairdressers, had known that the propellant in hairspray was carcinogenic, they would have put the vinyl chloride industry out of business. So the industry kept that a secret too. But then something happened that they couldn't really hide. Between 1968 and 1974, 4 workers in one vinyl chloride plant in Louisville, Kentucky, all died of angiosarcoma of the liver. The same extremely rare cancer that Dr. Maltoni had found in his lab rats. The industry was finally forced to admit that there was a direct link between vinyl chloride exposure and cancer. In response, the chemical workers' unions demanded that the government drastically reduce exposure levels, and a limit was finally set at 1 part per million. As for the millions of women who were being exposed every time they did their hair, industry never made any public announcement. They just quietly took the vinyl chloride out of hairspray. There's no way of knowing how many people might have gotten sick.
If you asked any trade association involved with vinyl chloride today what the risks of angiosarcoma are, you're going to be told that it's a result of excessive exposures years ago, far away, that have nothing to do with today's population. That workers who entered, this is like gospel. Workers who entered the workforce after 1974 when the new laws went into effect, oh, none of those guys have gotten angiosarcoma.
To this point, the only vinyl workers I knew anything about were resin workers, the ones who convert raw vinyl chloride, a gas, into polyvinyl chloride, or PVC. The industry insists that this is the only time in the PVC manufacturing process when there is any risk of vinyl chloride exposure. So most of the health studies have focused on the resin workers. Once the vinyl chloride gas is converted into these PVC pellets, fabricators take over. Their job is to turn the pellets into consumer products. In the process, the pellets usually get heated up, and small amounts of vinyl chloride can sometimes be released. But the industry still maintains that fabricators are at no risk. The thing is, there are many more fabricators than resin workers, literally millions worldwide. And some studies have suggested that they may have an increased risk for certain cancers and other diseases. But the vinyl industry maintains that they know of no cases of vinyl chloride-related angiosarcoma in fabricators, so there's no need to study them further. I would have liked to believe that. A fabricator somewhere made our vinyl siding. But then I heard about Michael Wayne Cox, who started working as a fabricator in 1978, 4 years after the government drastically reduced exposure limits to vinyl chloride. He was diagnosed with angiosarcoma of the liver in 1986, right before he died. He was 30. Later, his wife filed suit, and though the industry paid her a generous settlement, they assured her that since Michael was a fabricator and therefore at no risk for vinyl chloride exposure, his angiosarcoma must have been caused by something else. Dr. Paul Brantrauf has a very different opinion about the health risks for PVC workers like Michael Wayne Cox. He's conducting gene studies on people working at the current maximum exposure levels and below, and he's found mutations that suggest what the vinyl industry considers safe just might not be.
Hello? Can you see that right there?
Yeah?
What this is blood samples from vinyl chloride workers. Here's a worker who has this particular band, which corresponds to the same molecule that we see inside this tumor. So our suspicion is that if you have these mutations, you have a much higher risk of going on to get tumors. So therefore, it is worrisome that individuals exposed below the current exposure limit have evidence of these mutations in their body.
But these workers don't have tumors yet, right?
That's right. This study started over 17 years ago, but the results are clear. While they appear healthy, workers who were exposed after 1974 have mutations that are identical to the mutations we would find if they did develop angiosarcoma of the liver. Based on our research, it seems to me there's a need for a study of all PVC workers working at the current exposures and a re-examination of the 1 part per million safety limit.
So, can you just tell me, when is vinyl chloride safe?
What gets better? There is no safe level.
Can you talk about that a little?
There is no zero risk level. The only zero risk level is zero exposure. Okay, and you're never going to get down to zero exposure if you're going to be making vinyl chloride. There's always going to be some residual exposure somewhere, even if it's parts per trillions or parts per quadrillion, which we can measure nowadays. I mean, we can measure vanishingly small numbers. But for every molecule of vinyl chloride present, there is some residual risk that that molecule will get into somebody's body and cause a cancer. So if you've got a molecule present, you got a risk.
Right, we're gonna stop there. Like I told you guys, we want to have some time for some discussion. And so I'm gonna bounce you to a video that was done with Jess Conard, our guest speaker, who's gonna be coming up. And we're gonna look at that. I will set aside sometime later this week to do the whole show, just where you can just log on and just watch it from start to end. If we wrap up our discussion, we'll continue the video as well. All right, so for right now, before we go to Jess Conard's video, let's open it up for questions on what we've watched so far. I'm gonna turn on a little light here so you can see. So does anybody who's on Zoom or in the room have a question? Just raise your hand and I'll call it. Raise your hand up. All right, Barbara, go ahead.
Yeah. Do we actually know for a fact that they no longer use vinyl chloride as a propellant in hairspray and other products?
For hairspray, I personally don't know that for a fact that it's not used in other products. My guess is that it probably is. I'm not real sure on the law. The vinyl chloride is one of the things that I haven't learned as much about because I've been so engaged with PFAS and synthetic plane surfaces. But you're going to be getting a toolkit that's going to have a whole bunch of resources for you to access, and they might have that answer in there. But I can definitely write it down and get back to you. Actually, would you do me a favor? Put it in the chat, and that way I can capture it and then extract it out, and we'll get your answers. Okay. You can put your hand down. Anybody else have a question? Yes.
So what are the most common products made with from vinyl chloride today?
Okay, that is a great question. So Cynthia's question is, what are the most common products that are made from vinyl chloride today? Can you guys tell me some here in the audience, on screen or Zoom?
PVC pipe, PVC pipe.
Yes, PVC pipe.
He was talking about siding.
Siding. Yeah. What else? We're standing on it.
Flooring.
Flooring. Yeah. Most of
and,
fit on it.
And I'm sorry, I just wanted to make a comment, Tamala, and that is OSHA protects the workers now with vinyl chloride, but it does nothing for the community. So that is a real issue.
Perfect. Thanks for interjecting. That's why I love doing this, is because we have a lot of people who are know things that, you know, some of us don't. So wonderful. Thank you for interjecting. Okay, so what else is made from chloride? What do our kids sit on every day? Chairs. Yeah, chairs are made of
and swings and you know, all the plastic things that kids crawl on the playground.
It's gardening season. What else? Like hoses. Yeah, your hose vinyl. And your kids might stomp a puddle with these. Yep. Boots. Yeah. If you don't buy cow leather, the alternative, vinyl. Yeah, you sit on, you know, some fox leather. It's vinyl. But it's in toys, from everything from your rubber ducky to Barbie.
Is it vinyl or just a specific type? You know, that's what I was wondering.
You mean the chemical toxicity?
Yeah, the poly. Yeah, is that all vinyl or some?
Yeah, yeah, anyone have an answer? My guess is yes. And then I'll get to Abdu and Lori.
They may not have heard that question.
The question was, is polyvinyl chloride present in all vinyl? I'm thinking the answer to that is a yes. Anybody?
So if I have a man-made fabric in my shoes, it's...
Yeah, my guess is yes. Abdu, go ahead and ask your question.
Yes, I first wanted to highlight that it seems as if most products that we utilize is made from vinyl chloride. But my comment is, I work in the printing industry, and we use vinyl a lot, especially for illuminated signboards and on T-shirts for vinyl print transfers. So do we have any risks that we're dealing with?
I would most definitely say yes, because you're heating it up and it's getting hot to print. And so there's going to be gases escaping in that. In fact, I just wanted to print a new infographic on synthetic and poured in place surfaces for children, and was having a hard time finding a printer that would print it on a canvas instead of on the PVC, the plastic. Yeah, I would definitely say there's a risk. And I know I just bought for myself, I'm doing construction work in my house and we're cutting tiles, but there are special masks. I would definitely look into what mask is for gas. I'm pretty sure I remember, but I don't want to say it right now, but I'll look that up for you and you can look it up if you find it before me, give it to me and we can include that in the kit. And we can request that you guys wear masks to protect yourself during your work. Lori, question.
Thank you for that. And I guess we are at major risks, and we also contribute to emissions from the vinyls.
Yes, I mean, I know for a fact that come on in, you can join us. That just having vinyl windows, vinyl flooring, even without it, getting hot or anything, it's off gassing. And there's toxicities to us. So that's why it's really, schools are not the healthiest place for our kids because of that, because they're surrounded by vinyl, Any other questions, Abdu?
I guess that's it. But I do want to know if there are any greenhouse gases, the specific greenhouse gases that comes from the production and the operations of vinyls.
Very much so. Let's see if they written down here. Yeah, there's going to be a lot of volatile organic compounds, maybe polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons, not 100% sure, but I'll make a note to isolate what greenhouse gases there are. And I'll get that information to you, or I'll look it up, I might have it here in my information. But these are great questions, guys.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, sure. One second, Julia. Lori?
Hey, Tamala. As usual, great discussion, great presentation. I just retired from plumbing supply company, and I'm just wondering, what is the exposure risk to folks who have PVC piping in their homes?
Yeah, it's a definite risk that I have done some research on, and there is chemical leaching. It depends on the circumstances. So number one, all PVC pipes are formulated different, so there's no standard, okay, and so it depends on the brand and the manufacturer. So that's going to depend on how much chemical leaching comes out of that pipe into the water. So some pipes may not show that and some may. There's also variance in, whether it's PEX or PVC piping. They each are made for different circumstances. So some might be more sensitive to heat, water, pressure, just different things that might weatherize them differently. And that will contribute to the leaching of microplastics and chemicals in them. I have not had a chance to write all that up, and it's quite complicated, and I haven't had a chance to synthesize that and put it in a nice document in the toolkit, that, will be something I'll be doing. All the toolkits that, you get from me are living documents. If you guys have things you want to go in and I find stuff, I'm constantly updating, like the PFAS and the synthetic flame surfaces kit and even my reuse kits. But polyvinyl chloride is, kind of newer in my wheelhouse of working on things. But we do have some really good resources to get you, and we'll continue to update that. John, questions or comments? Thanks, Lori.
Thank you.
Yeah, sure, Camelot. Thanks. I'm grateful for your popularizing the consequences of this fossil addiction we live under. But everything nearly manufactured is made for to last longer than natural decay, which everything wants to naturally decay. It's called entropy. Has plastic in it, vinyl chloride, and that is the consequence of having so much fossil extraction with our fracking these days that they have to find a place to put it. So they make more plastic. I don't want to alarm anybody. I'm sorry, but the plastic it's running through our bloodstreams. It little nano beads of plastic. It's forever going to be on this planet now. And I just got off another meeting on the nuclear industry. I tell you, my body, your body, our bodies are the last vessels for radiation, nuclear radiation, and for plastic. And it's going to be, it's there was Abdu asked about the fossil greenhouse gas consequences. It's made from fossil fuels.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah, we talked about all the amount of toxicities earlier at the beginning. Okay, so if there are no other questions for right now, I'm going to push a pause on our questions because our guest speaker will be here with us soon. And so we're going to go and now watch her video and learn a little bit more.
Hi, thank you so much for allowing me the opportunity to speak with you.
Okay, so everybody, can you hear and see this?
Yes.
My Zoom people? Okay, I'm enlarging.
Today, my name is Jess Conard. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm a resident of East Palestine, Ohio. I am also the new Appalachia director for Beyond Plastics. While I'm speaking today, I'd like you to each think about what qualifies someone to work as an activist or to tell the story. Maybe a frontline community member like me would have unique qualifications, but would a chemist or a medical professional be better suited? We are going to come back to this at the end, but try to put it in your head. I'm going to tell you the short version of the East Palestine, Ohio story to get everyone up to speed on the reality of moving vinyl chloride around the country. I'm going to give a rundown of what we know about vinyl chloride and explain our very timely work at Beyond Plastics to ban vinyl chloride. I'd be happy to answer any questions via email. You can email me at jessconard@bennington.edu. So East Palestine, Ohio is a small rural community in eastern Ohio. It sits right on the Pennsylvania border. This is a photo of my downtown, what it looks like right now. This is the train that goes through my backyard and what it sounds like about every 10 to 20 minutes, depending on what day it is. And on February 3rd, 2023, a Norfolk Southern train carrying 700,000 gallons of vinyl chloride passed by my house on fire. It derailed 2 miles from my home. The train wheels were on fire an hour before it passed by. And despite this ample time, we did not get a warning. First responders from 63 fire departments in the tri-state area, Ohio, Pennsylvania, and West Virginia, came to put out the half-mile-long fire from the derailment. People living within 1 mile were forced to evacuate in the middle of the night. My family was advised to stay home. Once the fire was extinguished, attention quickly turned to the leaking vinyl chloride cars. On February 5th, officials announced a possible catastrophic explosion of one of the cars containing vinyl chloride. School was canceled for the week and the National Guard was deployed to monitor the very measly 1 mile evacuation zone. On February 6th, officials reported an explosion of the vinyl chloride was imminent and decided to prevent the explosion by performing a vent and burn. That afternoon, I urgently packed a bag, loaded up my children, and drove rapidly out of town. While evacuated, not 1, but 5 cars of vinyl chloride were drained into a ditch and purposely put on fire. After a few hours, officials had announced that the vent and burn was a success. Upon our return, we saw a massive cloud of black smoke. Our home strongly smelled like chemicals for a week due to the weather inversion, causing the chemicals to remain in our town rather than blow away. This is a photo from my back porch a few hours after the vent and burn commenced. We were told the smell that week was not toxic. We know now, based on a community meeting with the CDC, that those who remained in the town that week were exposed to toxic chemicals. At that meeting, we were told that there was nothing that they could do about our exposures, but that they could certainly treat our cancers. February 23rd, the National Transportation Safety Board, NTSB, deemed the train derailment 100% preventable. During a hearing held at my high school by the NTSB in June that year, the owners of the vinyl chloride, Occidental Vinyl, testified they repeatedly advised officials that a vent and burn was not necessary. My new Beyond Plastics colleague, Judith Inc., who previously worked at the EPA, said the decision to vent and burn the vinyl chloride was unprecedented. She had never heard of that happening before, and she believes the EPA deferred too much to the governor, and the governor deferred too much to Norfolk Southern in reaching this decision. Many people in my community have spoken out about how the train company and the government agencies have failed us. I have been a fierce advocate in areas of public health concerns, rail safety, and environmental watchdogging. After a little over a year of advocacy, countless phone calls, national and international Zoom calls, emails, trips to the State House, Washington, D.C., New York City, we still have unmet needs in East Palestine. We continue to hear from authorities that it is safe, and often laughably, that the chemical remained within the 1 mile evacuation zone, but we can still see and smell the chemicals, even to this day in March. And while chemicals know no boundaries, neither does my advocacy. I'm not a character in a story. I'm an honest and hardworking woman, a mother whose mother became a small business owner and whose father is a veteran who fought in Desert Storm. My siblings are parents, college graduates, medical professionals, and salespeople. I grew up riding my 10-speed bike all over what is now a contaminated town. Spending days at my public pool, using words like buggy for shopping cart and crick for creek. Those cricks that run just steps from hundreds of back porches where my friends live, where we played, underneath businesses, through our park. These areas still remain contaminated over a year later. I've started a chapter in my life that includes the honor of working alongside many incredible advocates and advocacy groups. It is likely the most important work that I have ever done. And this is leading a campaign to ban toxic vinyl chloride. What happened in my community could have been prevented. And we also know that toxic vinyl chloride pollution that occurred in East Palestine is not an isolated incident. It's very much a symptom of a larger issue. Vinyl chloride has actually been a known carcinogen for 50 years, since 1974. Over 99% of vinyl chloride is used to make polyvinyl chloride, also known as PVC plastic. How much vinyl chloride actually gets produced is really difficult to determine. This answer ranges from 10 to 20 billion pounds a year. Facilities have notoriously withheld their production volumes, citing confidential business information. So this information really isn't readily available to the public, and that's a problem. There are 373,262 residents who live within 3 miles of a vinyl chloride, PVC manufacturing, or PVC waste disposal facility. Of those, 63% are people of color, 27% are children, and people living in these areas earn an average of $23,000 a year. That's it. Vinyl chloride is very dangerous, and exposure has been linked to various types of cancer, including brain, liver, and lung, lymphoma, and leukemia. But it's not just cancer. Other brutal health impacts involve damage to the nervous system, the immune system, decreased strength in fingers, arms, and joints. The incineration or burning of vinyl chloride, like what happened in East Palestine, also produces and releases dioxins. Dioxins are a family of chemicals that are persistent and bioaccumulative, meaning they stick around. These are very toxic. Dioxins are carcinogens, which means they cause cancer, and they also cause other harmful effects on our reproductive, developmental, and immune systems. Because dioxins are also endocrine disruptors, they can be hazardous at incredibly low levels of exposure. And they can also lead to something called chloracne, which is a rare skin eruption. And we did see some anecdotal cases of this in East Palestine residents. PVC, which is made from vinyl chloride, is identified as a number 3 plastic. And these are the plastics that pollute the world in the name of profit. PVC plastic products cannot be readily recycled, but they are used for a lot of items that we have in our homes, including drinking water pipes, credit cards, vinyl siding, shower curtains, kids' toys, and single-use plastic packaging. We know right now that there are 19 vinyl chloride and PVC resin factories in the United States, and there are also factories in Canada, Mexico, and Colombia. In 2021, the United States facilities collectively self-reported releasing 414,803 pounds of toxic vinyl chloride into the air. Now, just for comparison, the amount of vinyl chloride that was released in the air in East Palestine on February 3rd, 2023 was 1.1 million pounds. The number 1 air polluter in 2021 of vinyl chloride was Westlake Chemical, with plants in Kentucky, Louisiana, and Mississippi. Formosa was in 2nd place, and my personal congratulations goes to Occidental Chemical and Shintech in 3rd and 4th places respectively. These two are the owners and producers of the vinyl chloride cars that derailed and burned 2 miles from my home in East Palestine. And while I do want to stay on target here, another juicy tidbit about this dynamic duo is that both Occidental and Shintech have faced millions of dollars in fines for violating federal environmental laws, including for railroad safety. This is an important map that shows the largest vinyl chloride and PVC production plants in the United States and neighboring countries. So the red is vinyl chloride or PVC production in the US, blue is outside of the US, and purple represents an incinerator, landfill, or another waste receiving facility. But the impact of PVC and vinyl chloride does not stop at the site of production or waste, as we saw in East Palestine last year. Communities impacted by vinyl chloride PVC supply chain also include those along the transportation routes for its dangerous chemicals and toxic wastes. According to a recent study by Frac Tracker, over 14 million people live within 1 mile of the railroad tracks in just the 3 Appalachian states of Ohio, Pennsylvania, and West Virginia. Millions of additional vulnerable populations in these states spend the majority of their days within 1 mile. So you're talking about hospitals, nursing homes, schools, daycares. Since 2010, there have been at least 40 chemical incidences worldwide involving vinyl chloride and PVC. Fires, leaks, and explosions killed at least 71 people and injured 637 people in those 40 incidences globally. This is also a very important map. This map hones in on just one vinyl chloride manufacturer, Oxyvinyls. This rail line supplies Oxyvinyls and Orbia PVC plastic factories. So with this just this one company alone, here are some chilling statistics from a new report released by Toxic Free Future, January of 2024. At any given moment, roughly 36 million pounds of vinyl chloride travels on more than 200 rail cars across nearly 2,000 miles of US railways. That's at any given moment. Annually, just under 8,600 rail cars carry approximately 1.5 billion, with a B, billion pounds of vinyl chloride. This route travels through 8 major cities. And we also know that every Oxyvinyls and Orbia plant in this investigation has been out of compliance within the last 18 months. So it's time for the United States Environmental Protection Agency to ban vinyl chloride. We have alternatives for every PVC product on the market. PVC plastic poisoning has been identified around the world. It's already banned in other countries like Canada, Spain, South Korea, and the Czech Republic. Companies like Target, Walmart, Nestle, Aldi, and Unilever announced that they would stop using PVC packaging by 2025. They all know the dangers of this chemical and the poison and pollution caused by its products. There is some good news. The United States EPA does have the authority to ban vinyl chloride, and this is under something called the Toxic Substance Control Act, TSCA, also you could say TSCA. TSCA is legislation that provides a broad authority to regulate chemicals across their life cycle. So this would be from manufacturing all the way through disposal. The TSCA process is roughly 6 years, and a chemical named to this list does require consideration of circumstances under which the chemical is either intended, known, or reasonably foreseen to be manufactured, processed, distributed in commerce, used, or disposed of, including foreseeable accidents like railway accidents. The EPA must also determine whether the chemical presents an unreasonable risk to any potentially exposed or susceptible population. So this would be residential folks, infants, children, pregnant women, workers, or the elderly. In addition, this act must place consideration on the aggregate and cumulative risks, pathways of exposure, and any and all reasonably available information. So that's a lot of information just now, but there is some good news. We did submit a petition to the EPA last year. It now has, I believe, over 33,000 signatures. It was hand-delivered to the United States EPA last summer by several amazing advocacy groups, including Beyond Plastics. And in December of 2023, December 14th, the United States EPA announced that vinyl chloride was going to be one of the 5 chemicals that will undergo a new toxicity review under the Toxic Substance Control Act. This was really exciting. This is the first legal step to ban vinyl chloride. Among the additional chemicals named on this list, 4 out of the 5 are explicitly stated to be used in plastics production. So for the initial year, right now, we have a 12-month risk assessment period, which is what we're in right now. The EPA, at the end of this period, the EPA will determine if a high priority designation should be assigned. Once the high priority designation is finalized, the EPA will commence a multi-year risk evaluation process, followed by a separate multi-year rulemaking process, which, as many of you know, we hope will result in a ban or a phase out of vinyl chloride. So what can you do? Right now, there is a 90-day public comment period through March 18th of 2024. There will be another comment period later this year that the EPA will announce. So if you don't get your comment in this time, there will be another opportunity. I would encourage you to write your comment today or tomorrow or sometime before March 18th. Beyond Plastics, Earth Justice, and others will be fully involved in this process. So while I agree that rail safety needs a hefty revamp, it's the vinyl chloride that's really responsible for uprooting my community and impacting so many others every day. So there's that same picture of my downtown behind bars. Some say that my community is doomed for an end life of cancer and suffering, and maybe that's true. But as long as I'm still breathing, I know that there is work to be done. I intend to stand up for my community, and I intend to work to ensure that there is not another East Palestine situation. So what did you decide? What qualifies you to work as an activist, or maybe to support someone in their advocacy ventures for health or for human life? What qualifies a frontline community member like me, or maybe a student or a journalist or a medical student to do this work? Many of us, again, we are not chemists or engineers or environmental lawyers. We have little or no background knowledge in the polymerization of vinyl chloride, for instance, or how to handle radioactive waste. Personally, prior to the train derailment, I had never even heard of the word petrochemical when this all started. But here I am now, talking to all of you, talking about vinyl chloride. I think what we have to really remember that what qualifies someone to work is that we have a unique perspective. We have a unique knowledge, because the oppressed will always be able to talk about the problems of the oppressor. And these might be problems that the oppressor doesn't even know that they have. For example, it's what gives women the qualifications to talk about toxic masculinity. It's what gives Black people the qualifications to talk about white supremacy. It's what gives homeless people the qualifications to talk about hostile architecture. It's what gives LGBTQ children the qualifications to talk about social oppression and give parenting advice when they have never been parents. It's what gives you the qualifications to simply be in this meeting or in this room and listening to this speech. What qualifies you is simply your will to stand in solidarity with someone that has suffered. I would encourage all of you to stand in solidarity with folks from East Palestine, Ohio, from Mississippi, from Kentucky, from Texas, all those folks that have been directly impacted by vinyl chloride, and submit a comment today. Thank you so much.
All right. Okay, so before we move on, I have some answers to some questions that were asked earlier regarding mass and chemical toxicities. So I believe you need the P100 mask, but double check with OSHA for that. And for the chemical toxicities, as you heard, 95% of the vinyl chloride is polyvinyl chloride, and it has some of the things that she had mentioned that it has is lead, cadmium, volatile organic compounds. The older fluorine had formaldehyde. Now it shouldn't, but it has dioxins and some other things. So when kids are playing on these floors, they're closer to them and their chemical toxicities. And also interesting to note with the greenhouse gas component of it, the polyvinyl chloride is the biggest, like contributes the most in carbon dioxide and methane in its production. All right. So we'll take like 5 minutes of questions before we introduce our guest. Does anybody have any questions? All right, and we're gonna go ahead and introduce Jess, and then you guys can start your questions with her. And well, she pretty much just introduced herself, honestly. That magnificent video, that was just incredible. Every time I watch it, Jess, I like learn a little more. So just real quick, Jess, I'm guessing you were on the call today for Tosca at 2 o'clock.
I was on the call today with the White House. Is that what you're referring to?
Yes, yes. Okay, good. We'll ask questions about it later, but I want to give our audience a chance to ask you questions. So just like before, in here, raise your hand, and online, raise your hand. If you're not talking, Zoom crowd, just keep muted. All right, so bravo, absolutely right. That's just like that video. Everyone, let's put that around the house. It was one of the best videos I've ever seen. It was just so well done, so personable, so informative, and your cadence, your inflection, just everything about it was just sheer genius. I just love it. So we appreciate you coming here tonight to share with us some more information and answer questions.
Well, thank you so much. It's an honor to be here. And, you know, as a resident of East Palestine, the last year has been nothing less than spectacular. Some ways have been good and some ways have been not so good. I think, you know, the last part of that presentation is something that I'm really passionate about. I get asked a lot, you know, well, you don't have an engineering degree, or, you know, you were a speech therapist before this, and that's very true, but it's not something that you can't just dive into and start learning about, especially when it's impacting your family or your friends. And then once you realize that it's impacting so many other communities, you know, that's really what keeps me going, is knowing that the frontline community members, we're all together in this fight. It's not just me. It's that solidarity that shines. So it's lovely to meet you all. What a great turnout, and I hope you enjoyed the movie. Pretty interesting stuff.
Yeah, I agree with you, Jess, on that. Sometimes, like you said, because if you don't have a PhD, you get discounted. But I think people are listening. listening to you and the others in your community. Anu, go ahead, ask your question.
I have a question and a comment also. First of all, thanks to Tamila and thanks to Jess for a very enlightening conversations on this important topic. I'm anguished, angered, and frustrated and sort of depressed listening to all of this. I don't have grandkids yet, but I'm sure in near future I will be. I think we should all be on the street screaming, kicking, and asking for our lawmakers to ban vinyl chloride if it is that bad. And I think Lobby Day is coming soon. And I work with CPR and IEC in Illinois with Jen Walling. And I think on the Lobby Day, I think this will be perfect time to ask our legislator to do something about it. Am I right? Yeah. Can we?
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think, one of the reasons that I joined Beyond Plastics in this fight against vinyl chloride is because we had a mutual interest, and there are mutual interests across the country, different groups that are working to educate folks on this type of chemical and what it can do. And it's so just heart-wrenching to think that we knew that this was a carcinogen back in the 70s, 50 years ago, and that we could have prevented this pollution, and that we don't really need this product because there are alternatives for every product on the market. So yeah, that's one of the missions of Beyond Plastics. We are pushing a national campaign right now to educate folks, but we are in contact with legislators quite often. I love the idea of doing a lobby day. That is something that I think is great. The grassroots efforts are really what makes this movement so important and so special. When you think globally and act locally, that is where you can make the most change. So absolutely.
Right. And I think we should talk to wherever you can. Like I go to a book club, maybe I'll mention it over there. I talk to people in India, I will talk to them. Talk to friends in UK, tell them how bad it is. So maybe spread the word, because I know PVC is very poisonous, but I don't think many people still know how bad it is, and it's a carcinogen. I don't think many people know that. So thank you. Thank you, Jess.
In a little bit, we're going to give you guys the opportunity to sign the Beyond Plastics petition, and then there's going to be a week of actions coming up. I believe it's May 13th. That I'll be sending out too. And like I said, you're going to be getting a bunch of different resources and information to, continue to look at this and, prepare for a lot. Wait.
Who exactly is the pro PVC?
Oh boy, I'm gonna let you guys answer that. You tell me, who do you think the
petroleum industry?
Yes, exactly. The petrochemical industry. Yeah, they're the ones making the money, right? So.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, they must have powerful people behind them.
They're in the pockets of politicians.
Lobbyists, legislators.
Yeah. Yep. They do.
They got the gold. That persuades a lot of elected officials. The money.
Yeah.
We're buying it.
Oh.
They buy the votes.
Yeah.
It's in the toolkit, but I'm wondering, like, a lot of things are carcinogens, but like, what? Do we have anything like that shows what exposure limit is? Like what the exposure limit is and stuff?
So Jess, Julia's asking, do we have something that can tell people what the exposure limit is? And I know some Peggy had commented that there's different levels for workers, but there's not really regulations for residents, regular consumers. What information do you have on that?
Yeah, so there to answer your question, there is no safe level of exposure. Zero. There is no safe level of exposure to carcinogens. Carcinogens don't just increase the risk for cancer, they cause cancer. That's what makes them carcinogens. They are known to cause cancer. So to answer your question wholly, there is not a limit. Workers that are exposed to this, they do have some research and some guidelines that they are supposed to report increased exposures if they are, you know, having an increased exposure level, like for say their PPE falls off or they inhale something that they're not supposed to. Those are all reportable. They can do like blood tests and urine tests and things like that to determine the level of exposure that workers have in the workplace. But as far as residential exposure, there isn't any research because you're not supposed to be exposed to vinyl chloride in your residence, which is really unfortunate because you have, you know, for example, Westlake Vinyls, which is in Calvert City, Kentucky. The EPA is currently looking into that facility. It's a vinyl chloride manufacturing facility, and their emissions level of EDC, which is ethylene dichloride, which is a product used to make vinyl chloride, have been elevated. And by that, I mean above the acceptable limit. At 3 different locations across Calvert City. So there's a lot going on right now. There's an increased population of angiosarcomas right now in Calvert City, Kentucky. So those folks are really having a hard time with, you know, a stationary location that's supposed to be regulated by the EPA. And, you know, I mean, I have to say I'm glad that the EPA is monitoring the situation, but there's no real takeaways from that situation. What do I do right now for my family? Those are questions that we are often faced in East Palestine. Okay, there was a vinyl chloride exposure, you know, a little over a year ago. What do I do for my family now? I recently found out some residential testing in East Palestine that showed elevated levels of vinyl chloride. What do I do with that information? Do we move? Do we not go outside? What's going on at the site? These are questions that we ask very frequently because there isn't any research on a safe level of exposure because there is no safe level of exposure.
Like a lot of things that you know, for instance, the household bleach, I try not to, you know, you try to avoid it, but a small amount of it, you know, is not going to be as toxic. And certainly what you went through was absolutely horrific. But I'm wondering, like, with the workers, was it more breathing it, touching it? Like those kind of questions, I wonder to what degree that is. And I also, a friend of mine who works for the state was telling me that if you switch to copper piping instead of PVC, you would then have to coat the insides of the piping with other chemicals. So what I'm trying to figure out, like a lot of these, because I don't have a degree in it, you know, trying to understand the larger picture, like, you know, what your alternatives are and what else. I'm sorry, I don't mean to be negative because I think what you went through was absolutely horrific and we need to do something. But like for me as a citizen trying to figure out, you know, what the alternatives are and what you can do. I don't know.
Well, I think if I could answer your question, and I'm not a piping expert, I don't know I couldn't name every alternative for PVC, but the truth of the matter is that we have it. It's not rocket science. The problem is that it might not be readily available to the consumer. Why is that? You already know the answer, because vinyl chloride products are more profitable for these companies. We have the technology. Actually, hospitals were warned years ago not to use vinyl chloride in their IV bags. They were warned years ago not to use that, and they continue to use that because it's cheap and it's easy and it's available. The products that we have on the market now, those are those same products. They're cheap, they're easy, they're available. We really need to start, you know, pushing and lobbying, you know, for some of the alternatives to become available, for us to be educated on those safer alternatives, and for them to be, you know, put into the construction, into our homes that we're purchasing, into the homes that we're building. There's such a push right now for luxury vinyl flooring. And it's really unfortunate because it's toxic. And when you put this material in homes, if you were to have, say, a fire, your first responders used to die of heart attacks. That was the #1 cause of first responder death. And now it's cancer because they're exposed to all of these toxic chemicals when they're on site. They don't know because it's flooring. You don't think about, oh, if my flooring burns, it's going to be toxic. So to answer your question, it is hard to find the alternatives because they're not necessarily made readily available to consumers right now, but they are available. There are products available, and they can be made more accessible. And they're just not.
Yes. The action that's happening in May, is that coinciding with the next EPA comment period? Or is it in preparation for that?
Jess, are they doing that we have action in preparation for the public comment period? But that's going on right now, right?
Sorry, I don't know if you can hear my son. My little guy's knocking at the door, but I do have someone here to take care of him, so don't worry. The second comment period under the Toxic Substance Control Act has not been announced yet. So I'm assuming it'll probably be sometime this summer. So I'm not sure.
And do go ahead and ask your question. Thanks for waiting.
Yes, from Jess's presentation, it does kind of answer the question of greenhouse gases accompanying vinyl chloride. And also, I do feel that we are generally vulnerable because I think most products are made of vinyl. I think bottles and all these other plastic products that we use in our houses and around us. So I think there should be a study to identify these dangers and try to define the alternatives to it.
Yeah. So I unfortunately I had forgotten that I wanted to load up for you guys a picture from a few weeks back in a videotape. A power line had broke in back of my yard, fell onto the ground, and lit up my polyvinyl chloride fencing that I installed back in 2002. And it just melted, and it was wafting for an hour and a half before they turned off the electricity, for one thing. PP&L, what the heck was that about? And two, you had these 4 firefighters standing right behind and spraying, foam, which was probably PVC, but right in that, where the smoke was coming. So they're breathing in the benzene and the furans, the dioxins, and other volatile organic compounds and everything. And it's horrible. And now that's in my, had a mulch pile there, and that's, probably that's all toxic now. But, my whole house is, because I took off aluminum siding because my contractor said to do that and replace it with vinyl because we couldn't find a match. And now I'm like dying, right? It's horrible. And I did put in a vinyl flooring, and I'm just like, oh my gosh. But yeah, we definitely need other things.
So sure.
Yeah.
And what's melted, long.
Just yeah.
Yeah.
Anybody have any other questions for Jess? Because I know she's got to go to another thing, and we can continue our discussion and go back to the other movie too.
So, what I wanted to ask is, so the pipes that transmit our waters are all exposed to this chemical.
Yes.
So
yes.
I believe
Like I
they
said,
should be
you're,
related to removing these pipes in the water system and probably find better solutions because we are at danger. Then we are supposedly drinking these chemicals.
Mhm. Yeah, we should move to recycled copper, phthalates, lead, cadmium, VOCs, or organotins they're called, and other chemicals are in the pipes and the microplastics. Yeah.
Is there any connection, or will EPA make any connection between like the new rules that just came out about PFAS and then this initiative? Or
no, they'll keep them separate because they are separate. They're separate class of chemicals. The PFAS are carbon with chlorine. This is with chloride. Yeah. Well, we really appreciate you coming, Jess, and being here this evening. It was just absolutely wonderful to have you. And I do have some questions real quick if the audience doesn't make sure I brought them with me because I was trying to cook soup while trying to take notes with the Tosca. And I think I might have left the printout on the printer. See if I can remember some of them. So, I noticed that one of the questions the group asked is, did the same things that they were saying that they were doing for the Ohio, were they doing it for Pennsylvania? And I noticed they really skirted that question neatly, and it appears like the answer is no. And I know you've talked, and in your video, you talked a little bit about how some of the things that they're doing for Ohio, they're not doing for Pennsylvania residents. What are your thoughts after listening to them today? How are you feeling about the disparity between them taking care of the two different communities and what they're doing now?
That's a really great question and a really important point. So the train derailment happened basically a stone's throw away from Pennsylvania. I know a lot of the attention has been on East Palestine because technically it was within our borders, but really a lot of the impact happened to those bordering towns in Pennsylvania. The healthcare clinic in town that was set up for the derailment, that really is just a triage. It's not really any type of specialized service. It's just like go in, tell them your symptoms, and then they send you out for testing, which is what you could get at your primary physician. So it's nothing important, but the Pennsylvania residents are not able to go there. They are not serviced at that location. I do know that today's meeting was pretty much the same thing. It was a highlight in the updates of what's happening for the residents of East Palestine, the Columbiana County, which is the East Palestine County. There was an update there. There was an update from the state EPA, the Ohio EPA. Nothing in terms of Pennsylvania services. It's been so unfortunate to see how that has all played out and how it just feels like they're being ignored. I do believe that there were some officials on the call, but I wasn't able to see everybody that was on the call. So I can't really accurately say that, but they did call it out in the meeting that it was nice to see some Pennsylvania officials. So I'm not sure exactly who was there. But yeah, a lot of the focus has really been on East Palestine, and East Palestine still has a ton of unmet needs. They said things here. I wrote some things down that that healthcare is a priority. What are you doing, buddy? Obviously it's not a priority because we don't have an organized healthcare response. So they can say that until the cows come home, but until you put action to words, there's not really going to be anything effective. The only thing they presented on was the ACE survey, which was done at the very beginning of this journey. And we haven't had any type of organized healthcare response since. So yeah, to be honest, there really isn't much for the PA residents. Something we've been pushing for is a regional response, because there are most likely folks even from West Virginia that have been impacted that are, you know, further down the river, and maybe they don't even realize that their sediment has most likely been contaminated by this. So lots of things to consider. It's unfortunate too that it's the regional, you know, Region 5 EPA is Ohio, and Region 3 EPA or DEP rather is Pennsylvania. So it's not even the same the same agency. So it's hard to get everybody to work together.
Yeah, I noticed that too. Gosh, I wish I had more time to have taken, you know, better notes and to formulate questions.
Tamara, does she have some highlights that she?
Yeah, do you have highlights you want to share with us about the TSCA meeting as I kind of try to jog my memory here?
The meeting today was not necessarily about TSCA. So if that's what you're talking about, the meeting today was just an East Palestine update.
Yeah, yeah.
The TSCA process, we did complete the first round of comments. In terms of what's next is we are just kind of waiting for that second comment period, doing, you know, a massive push for public education. And Reese, please stop. And you know, hopefully we'll continue to have, I know that we are going to do a press conference in Washington, D.C. this summer, like what we did last year, and hopefully we'll be able to get a response from that as well. We'll probably have some meetings with some officials. I'm so sorry. He just clearly loves his mom today. But yeah, I mean, it's just kind of out of our hands right now, just trying to do that public push and keep it in the news.
Yeah, yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much for being here tonight, and good luck. Other one, I know it'll be much appreciated, and we'll, you know, hopefully get some momentum going and maybe some lobbying done.
Thank you so much. I appreciate all of you, and I'm happy to answer any questions, you know, yeah, we'll figure this out. And I do believe that we're going to ban vinyl chloride. I really do.
Yeah, yeah. It's been decades, right?
It's time. Yeah, it's time.
All right. Well, you take care.
Thank you so much.
Let her boy before she has to jump on another car. Oh my gosh. So yeah, I want to bounce us real quick to the actions and share with you guys those. I'm going to put it in the chat, and those of you who are here today, don't worry that you're not on a computer and you know can't do this right now, because I'm going to be sending this to you. Okay, so you're going to be getting this information tidied up, and along with a toolkit that I have made, and I mentioned pipes and everything, and have a bunch of stuff on that, and it will have these petitions here. Gonna throw in the chat. But if those of you who are on the computer wouldn't mind doing this now, and then you'll be getting the information for the week actions of actions as well. But if you want to just do this one now while you're there, and I'm gonna grab the other one. EPA, right? I could have grabbed them at the same time. I think one might the Beyond Plastics. I'm not sure which one. Just looking at these QR codes. So one of the things that's important to talk about is, you know, alternatives. So it's good for all of us to think about what are our alternatives. So for vinyl windows, what could we get instead of vinyl windows?
What?
Yeah, wood. And for flooring, what could we get for flooring? Wood.
Yeah, what?
Wood, stone.
Bamboo.
Bamboo. Ceramic, porcelain tile. Yeah, there's other things. And then for this one, you know, can be a little bit harder, but what about for the vinyl upholstery that a lot of us have?
Leather.
Yeah, our pleathers. Get rid of that vinyl pleather. What are we gonna replace it with?
Fabric.
Yeah.
Cinder side.
Well, that's for the siding of the house, so cedar, but yes, we're on furniture right now. We never the cedar siding, that's okay.
But would you have to move to a natural fiber to get rid of all the plastic?
Yeah, you need to move to a natural fiber. Yeah, so you know, there might be some organic cotton leaves, some
I'm
type.
thinking that people are gonna give you pushback. I mean, I agree with you, but
Yeah.
I'm just thinking they're gonna give you pushback about staining furniture. And the same thing with windows, they use the vinyl to, you know, and.
Right.
Yeah. Whatchamacallit, to make it, the stripping to make it,
Yes.
weatherproof.
Weatherproof, yes, yes,
I
yes.
think what we're missing here, though, is that, I mean, if the EPA forbids vinyl chloride at some point, they're gonna have to come up. And companies are gonna have to come up with alternatives, and they'll be available.
Well, rubber, you know, rubber, you know, you make, like, now I'm not buying, you know, the memory foam mattress, I'm gonna buy a latex mattress that's made out of rubber from, you know, a rubber free kind of thing, latex, from a plant. So
Tell me where you get that, because we need.
there's a bunch, and I will tell you, there's a lot of greenwashing. So I have a whole toolkit for that in my PFAS toolkit.
I also find frustrating, just little things like, you know, getting my deodorant cardboard, that came out, now it's gone.
Yeah.
People didn't like it. Well,
Yeah.
I put up with it because that's what I feel committed
Yeah.
to, but it's hard sometimes.
Just hang in there, guys. More alternatives are coming out. But as far as going back to the furniture being, you know, not stain resistant and all that, honestly, you know, that's gonna be coated with PFAS, right?
Yep.
So that's, you know, less than 1 part per trillion is hazardous to your health, basically non-detect, right? So it's the same kind of thing. And we can go to how I used to do my couches. So I would put a very tight woven fabric. You know, I was a cheap college student, but you know, that's what I got. And I would wrap my foam, which, you know, of course, that was still toxic, I didn't know it back then. But then I would put another piece of fabric and then I would just take it off and wash it. You know, and that to this day, I'm reupholstering some secondhand, unfortunately, wicker furniture that I got from, I thought it was real wicker. It was his back porch was dark and he told me it was real wicker. I get it home just to find out it was vinyl. Here I am, you know, getting reused.
I've done the cotton shell. Yeah, moldy after a while, and I have a nylon one. Well, I could bring the nylon one.
Yeah, I have never had a problem with my natural fabric cover slips getting moldy and getting problematic. Never. They wash up just fantastic.
So sure.
Yeah. Okay, so going to the roofing, we've got cedar siding.
Hardy plank.
Yes, hardy plank.
Aluminum, although I don't think you can buy it.
Yep, aluminum. There's adobe type texture or, you know, cement type stuff, natural stone brick.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're all more expensive than vinyl side.
Yeah, oh, well, of course,
Yeah, vinyl side.
once again, why is vinyl siding inexpensive? We're paying for it with our subsidies.
No.
Back in 2018, Pennsylvania citizen paid $300 per Pennsylvania citizen per year for, fossil fuel industry subsidy. So in my household, that amounted to $1,500.
Might be worse in other states.
You know, right, yeah. Right, so we have a few minutes. Shall I go put on the rest of the video we were watching? Does anyone have any other questions?
I just want to make an observation.
Yeah.
You may not know this, maybe these people don't know it. But in Mechanicsburg, Pennsylvania, where we live, there is a very large PVC manufacturing plant, press line. You see this as you come on 114, say you're coming from the Carlisle Pike going to Mechanicsburg. It's on the left side of the road there.
Oh,
And you
man.
can see
What's
in their yard,
Press line.
CRESLINE.
Oh.
But you will see in their yard these huge stacks of PVC pipe, all different diameters, all white. But that supplies so much of the eastern seaboard. So you've got to bet $100 that they are getting vinyl chloride with a railroad car coming on a spur that goes right by the plant.
You're saying they're manufacturing it there?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay,
You
so
cannot miss it.
this is very
Come
perfect
115 from
for.
Carlisle Pike into town.
I'm so glad you mentioned that because as she was telling you before, we're identifying potential pollutant sources in the Conneaut Creek watershed.
It would be so interesting
That gets a potential hotspot there.
to talk to somebody, some people who work in that plant and see what precautions
Well.
they use for the workers.
Careful.
That would be very interesting.
Yeah, yeah,
Be careful, to do it carefully.
yeah, wow.
It's a big deal.
That is a big deal. So I know, we're working on trying to identify chemical toxins from microplastics, PFAS, endocrine disrupting chemicals, whatever, as well as the chemicals, physical parameters, and biotic, like toxins in fish, deer, etc., in the Conneaut Creek watershed where I am, and we're going to try and make a prototype and make a map so that anybody can figure out the toxins in their watershed. I do have quite a bit of mapping out there on my PFAS toolkit that you can go on and look at my past presentations where I help you identify potential point source and actual point source PFAS contamination. But a lot of where you'll have PFAS contamination, you will also have these other chemical contaminations of heavy metals, volatile organic compounds, polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons, the benzene, toluene, dioxins and things, because they kind of go together. And also remember, plastic is not only full of chemicals itself, but every chemical adheres to it. So look into those for now to see where your possible pollutants are in your creek, because we're definitely going to be investigating this crystalline here with the PVC. But the PFAS map can show you industries that are potential for PFAS contamination. It doesn't mean they are contaminating, unless they've already done testing and it shows that they are, but they are potential contaminants. Any questions in the room? Online? Shall we go back to the video for our last 10 minutes? Raise hands in the room. Yeah.
I'm getting a little concerned about, I see it a lot, this a lot of well-meaning charities get involved with like recycling things, and then I find that they send their wet waste to incinerators or do the like I did one where I was gonna recycle my shoes.
Yeah.
And then I found out a lot of them were going to the waste to energy stuff.
Yes, yeah, you're
And
absolutely
I
right.
feel like there's a really great charity in the area where they take apart you can bring your old electronics, and they take it apart, they train people, which I thought was great, and I brought my metal, and I said, what do you guys do with it eventually? And they said, well, we put it in the incinerator. I was like, oh no, because I don't want to like crush what they're doing for good, but I think that there's like a lack of education for like the ultimate.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's some good questions.
Right.
Number one, these people who are taking apart these computers are dealing with a lot of PFAS.
Yeah.
Because the PFAS are all over electronics. So one, what are they using for protection for that? And two, I would still rather them try and recycle the electronic, because then at least some of it ends up in that incinerator as opposed to all of it, and then some of it gets reused as opposed to none of it.
I mean, that occurred to me because I thought if I take it to the township and I pay the fee to get it recycled, my guess is a lot of that might wind up.
It's just going to the incinerators, yeah. And then the waste to energy is like at cement kilns, the paper mill. We have one of those in Mechanicsburg or Camp Hill that we've got to look at.
Well, I was gonna get rid of some of my sneakers, and I bought this thing, and you guys bag and send them in, and I started thinking, oh, mine, when I get rid of mine, they're dead, they're just gonna incinerate them, I don't know.
Barbara, question? Comment? You can come up there. Becca, you can come off mute and ask your question or comment.
Yeah, I didn't have a question. You asked for a raise of hands. Who wanted to go back to the rest of the video?
We will do that, then thank you. You were doing that raised hand. Awesome. Okay, so we will do that right now. And like I said, I will be getting this out for you guys at another time later this week. So you can watch it, from start to finish, however you want. Where is the video? Why the video disappeared? Load it up again.
That's fun.
Yeah, be in touch. Thank you so much for coming. Don't you guys mind gonna pin and sign again in terms of? Yeah.
They need to be my first.
The production and the disposal.
Right.
Cover that.
But you didn't really know that when you put it on the outside of the house.
No, I did.
And if you had?
I might have still overlooked.
We're at 40.
Because the vinyl resists.
Yeah. Yes.
You're welcome. Thank you. I brought the results to chemist Wilma Subra, 1999 winner of the MacArthur Genius Award. She works out of a trailer in New Iberia, Louisiana, and spends a lot of her time interpreting this kind of data for community groups all over the state. I know at the lab they said this was a huge amount of chloride.
Right, vinyl chloride, yes, yes. In the air, in the community, that is. It's 10 times the ambient air quality. It is a huge amount. It's getting into the air that was collected from these people's yards.
So the production of the raw vinyl at the Conde Vista vinyl plant is not contained.
Correct. It's moving off-site into the community where people live. And that air has vinyl chloride in it, and a large number of other chemicals as well.
Shoot, sediment and water contact. You should call that number right now, 478-6020.
I'll give you the phone, you could call.
Water contact? I thought it was just fish consumption. Who am I speaking with? No, I'm at Bayou Den right now, and I just saw the sign about water contamination and sediment contamination. So contact with the water itself is dangerous? Oh, yes? Okay, so I'm curious as to what it'll do to you if you do have contact with the water. And why there's only one bent sign. Oh, I called the wrong number. Okay, well, I'm on a boat at Bayou Den. I'm on a boat. Who are you gonna connect me with? Kathleen, I'm out at Bayou Den, and it says water and sediment contamination. Does that mean that contact with the water is dangerous? You think it means don't eat the fish, because there's fishermen fishing in this area. You say don't catch the fish. What about the fish that swim in and eat the sediment and then swim out into the lakes? So all of this estuary is polluted pretty much. You shouldn't eat the Who are you going to connect me with?
Water contamination isn't just a problem for swimmers and fishermen. A long-term leak from one vinyl chloride plant actually poisoned the groundwater in Mossville, making it the latest of several African American communities to be forced out by chemical contamination. Some families, like the Fugelays, decided to take their houses with them. The plant offered to buy the residents out. In exchange, they had to sign an agreement promising that if they ever developed health problems linked to groundwater contamination, they would not file suit against the company.
Just put it in the middle. Just put it in the middle. That'll be good enough.
For my parents, the vinyl siding was all about affordability and convenience. They didn't know anything about contaminated groundwater, or fabricators, or angiosarcoma. Like my father said, none of that was written on the box. And to be fair, the box was all my parents had to go on. Back home in Merrick, most of the dangers of vinyl are hard to see and easy to ignore. But there's an old Yiddish saying, if your neighbor's house is on fire, you're also not safe. In other words, if Lake Charles and Mossville are in trouble, so are we. What if we found an alternative to the vinyl? This is hypothetical. If we found an alternative that had less risks associated with it than PVC vinyl siding, which is on the outside of our house, we could take the vinyl off and we could make a point. One family could make 1 point, even if it was somewhat symbolic, us, to make a point that that a company that not just companies, but consumers and companies together have to be responsible for the whole life cycle of a product. Because if this burns, it's bad for it's bad for Bayview Avenue.
What Judy is trying to indicate is not the final product. The final vinyl product may be safe indeed.
No, it did.
But the process to produce that product may not be safe.
Yeah, Judy is saying the disposal of the vinyl products is what's causing all these problems.
Both.
The production and the disposal.
Right. But you didn't really know that when you put it on the outside of the house.
No, I didn't.
And if you had?
I might have still overlooked it.
Why?
Because the vinyl resists denting. It has various advantages.
So you're still happy with it?
Yes.
Even after you've been hearing me talk about this
Even
off and
after
on for the
this.
last 3 years?
Because I still think that the final product,
Dad,
if the siding, vinyl siding
Yeah.
that's on our home,
right,
were removed and
right.
a substitute material was installed
Yeah.
at no cost.
To you?
At no cost to me.
Okay.
What would happen to that vinyl siding that has been removed? How would you dispose
Well,
of that?
that's a really good question, and I've been thinking about it. What we've been thinking about, actually... Truth was, I hadn't figured that out yet. I had already called every East Coast facility on the Vinyl Institute's list of official PVC recyclers, but most said our used siding was more trouble than it was worth. If we could find an alternative that has less risk associated with it than polyvinyl chloride, and we will go out of our way to make sure that the vinyl that we take off the house does not get burned. And we could sell the house, and you wouldn't even have to talk about the vinyl with any of your prospective buyers.
We don't talk about it.
But
They
yeah.
see it, so you don't talk about it.
But you haven't put
don't
it on
talk
the
about
you haven't put it on the market yet, have you?
No, not yet.
If we could put it on, we would take this off. It would be cutting edge, Dad.
Sure. Maybe it is in California.
Maybe in California. I know she didn't mean to, but my mother had sent me to one of the only places in the country where my obsession with non-toxic building materials actually blended right in. What's that?
Hemp?
Hemp.
You're not surprised to find hemp here, are you?
No, but what
It's a
happens
great
if it
material.
burns? It's great for the whole community.
There you go. People will be happy.
Yeah.
Party board. Stucco.
Whole house is clay?
Yeah.
You heard of rammed earth?
No.
They use either foam core, rostra blocks, they call it, 10-inch blocks, and they shoot earth, 3 inches worth of earth on the exterior for siding. You've never heard of that?
Could we do that in Long Island?
I don't know.
I was told this was going to be a straw house.
Well, yeah, but we got to protect it somehow.
Right, guys, we have to tap out. Any final comments? No, there's nothing. Stop share. There we go. All right, there we go. Any final comments or questions before we say goodnight? I appreciate you guys coming, learning more about this topic, and look for information from me of resources on this and actions coming up on May 13th, the week of May 13th. Yes, Ray.
Are there any countries in Europe, maybe Australia, that are ahead of us?
Very much. Yes. Europe.
Could we learn from them
Yes.
instead of reinventing them?
Yes, we could follow Europe in many aspects. They're ahead in many things, agriculture.
Building.
Yeah.
Stuff like
We have to find a way to do that without our politicians thinking that they're actually better than us.
Yes, we do have some European models we could use.
Didn't that one film say that it showed the countries that had banned? Yeah. And it was
Canada.
I mean, Canada, Spain, South Korea. But then they had like South Korea. I know. That really kind of surprised me. I forget the fourth one.
Thanks, Barbara. Thanks, Mary. All right, we'll sign off, everybody. Good night. Good night. Thank you so much for coming. I appreciate you all. Bye.
Is your